The Law of One contains many Q&As that are very relevant for those seekers who have taken their search for unity through the mystical path. And one such question is the one in session 18, which is question number 5. And I want to take some time and cover that after more than 2, almost 3 years that I covered this particular question. In fact, it has been more than 3 years now that I remember. And that is from, like I said, session 18, which I already covered. And I will leave a link somewhere here in YouTube, and you can go and check. I think I did a very superficial job at covering the question. And so today I want to go back to this, and I will continue to do this as I continue to create videos on the Law of One, because there's so much you continue to learn and that you can take out of these Q&As. So, different from what I usually do in my series, I'm going to just read directly from the site, which I will show you here, and I will also leave a link in the description directly to this question so you can read it as well as I do here in the lawofone.info. So again, this question, which is from session 18, has to do with the mystical path and a misconception that is usually ascribed to the mystical path as obliterating the self. You shouldn't be anymore. There should be no more self. You are nothing. And so what's happening here? There are many paradoxes in the mystical path that need to be polished out of the teachings so we can understand in our direct experience what are they referring to. So let's begin with the question, and I'm going to go back and forth as I usually do. As you can see here, this is question 5 of session 18, and Don is saying, I have a question here from Jim that I will read verbatim. And this is the question. Jim says, much of the mystic tradition of seeking on earth holds that belief that the individual self must be erased or obliterated, and the material world ignored for an entity to reach nirvana. See, moksha, liberation, awakening, as it is called, or enlightenment. What is the proper role of the individual self and its worldly activities in aiding an entity to grow more into the Law of One? So let's make a pause here and reiterate that the question is basically, the mystical traditions say that we must eradicate this self so that we can reach nirvana. And just to give you the skinny of it, when we talk about obliterating the self, we're talking about the idea that I am a separate being. So dissolving the separate self, or the ego, as we sometimes call it. And I go further in my own teachings to say that there is no such thing as a separate self. In fact, the phrase separate self just refers to something nonsensical, because there is no separation in a self that is unity. The universe is one. However, we do have the idea that we are a separate self. And so what I do is that I call this the confused self, because there is only one self. And if this self is confusing itself with the experience, getting mixed up with the experience, then that is, of course, confusion. So there is no separation, only confusion. Now, that's what these mystic traditions are referring to. To reach enlightenment, which is simply the recognition of your own being, who you truly are, you have to give up the self. Jesus used to call this, sacrifice yourself. Whoever does not bear their cross on their back cannot follow me, right? Something like that, said Jesus, and many other iterations. That is precisely what Jesus was talking about. He even said, deny yourselves. I think it was Paul or John who said, I die every day so that I can be one with Christ. Same thing. We're talking about the same idea. realizing that you're not the separate self, which is something that you have been creating in your mind. Now, the thing is that the question goes into saying, what is the proper role of the individual self, right? Because there is oneness and then there is an individuality here. And this is where the crux of this question goes to. What do we do? I know that I am the infinite one, but there is something that wants to manifest here. There are things that I want to do. So how do we tackle that? What does Ra say? They say the proper role of the entity is, in this density, third density, to experience all things desired, big one here, to then analyze, understand, and accept these experiences, distilling from them the love light within them. Nothing shall be overcome. That which is not needed falls away. So, big phrases here. What is the proper role of each and one of us? Well, the proper role is to experience all things desired, to want to experience all the things that we desire. Now, wait a minute. This goes against Buddhism, which says desire is the mother of suffering. You see, another paradox here, because we cannot help but desire things. I mean, the Buddha himself desired to end suffering. Isn't that desire too? Well, that's the paradox. The thing is that we're not talking about desire from an impersonal level, and that's what we're talking about. Desire from the impersonal level. We usually get mixed up with the personal desires, which are those from the person. A person is a separate self, somebody who feels that it needs to acquire or accomplish or receive things in order to feel complete, whole. So those desires are the ones that the Buddha taught that are the reason for suffering. However, impersonal desires, those things that you don't know why you want to do it, but you just want to do it. It doesn't come from lack, and it doesn't come from the idea that the outcome of this seeking will make me feel complete, satisfied somehow. So Ra is skillfully saying, experience all things desired. You see? Because when you experience, you don't know if it's personal or impersonal at this point. You just know that you want to experience things. See? So what are you going to do? Well, you have to analyze, understand, and accept these experiences. No rejection and no, let's call it attachment to the experiences. Just simply, I wanted to do this, I did it, what now? What can I distill from this? Well, Ra is suggesting, distill from them the love light. What does love light mean here? There is a direction for these desires, which is the application of love. How can I distill love out of this experience? And this can go on its own video, but that's basically what we're looking for in each experience. So it doesn't get stuck in the lower chakras, if you want to put it that way. You want to bring that to the heart center. Nothing shall be overcome. This is very important. I don't think they use the word overcome in the question. I can't see it. But overcoming is something that we're so used to. You see, we experience something and then I'll get over it. We'll get over that. We shouldn't overcome things. That's what Ra is saying. That which is not needed falls away. That's a very good indicator to show that when we distill the experiences, then, well, those things that do not pertain to ourselves are going to fall away. We simply want to follow those experiences or those parts of the experience where we can distill love. The rest just falls away. Now, they continue saying, the orientation develops due to analysis of desire, right? Which is that orientation? We'll talk about that. These desires become more and more distorted towards conscious application of love light as the entity furnishes itself with distilled experience. So the key part here is furnishing yourself with distilled experience. Well, if the experience is all of this, and what I distill from the experience is love light, then what I'm furnishing myself is with that which I consider to be love, to be light, to be something of aid for the world and for me, and something that increases or increases my frequency, so to speak. You see, so the more we process experience this way, that's what's going to be distilled, and from that distillation, orientation develops, and that orientation is the service to others path, the positive path, the one of expansion, the one of unity. They keep going and say, we have found it to be inappropriate in the extreme to encourage the overcoming of any desires, except to suggest the imagination rather than the carrying out in the physical plane, as you call it, of those desires not consonant with the law of one, this preserving the primal distortion of free will. So now they emphasize the overcoming. Do not overcome your desires. Do not try and suppress them, in essence, is what they're trying to say here. Do not repress your desires. Live them. Only if they are not consonant with the law of one. So, example, if you're going to harm somebody, or if you're going to manipulate something or someone, if you want to experience something that you recognize that is not in alignment with the law of one, with helping people, to serving others in a way, then do it in your imagination. Don't think that because you have that desire, you cannot experience it. You can experience it in your mind. So maybe you want to do something that is violent. Don't do it. Do it in your mind. That's the only way that you're not repressing it, but you are containing yourself. There's another section later on where Ra talks about this, which is not a repression. It's simply there's a slight polarization here because of this repression. So it's not a bad thing. In practical terms, simply go along with your desire as long as they don't harm others and do any harm to the environment. Just do it in your imagination so you can practice it and try to distill the love out of that. They keep going and say, the reason it is unwise to overcome is that overcoming is an unbalanced action, creating difficulties in balancing in the time-space continuum. Overcoming thus creates the further environment for, wait for it, holding on to that which apparently has been overcome. So the reason it is unwise is that it's going to create difficulties right here in time-space. Time-space is everything that is going within your metaphysics, your mind, everything that is happening here, everything that is unfolding there. It's going to create an unbalance in there. So overcoming is going to create the further environment for you to attach to that. Because if you repress a desire, well, guess what? That desire is going to, you're going to be more attached because you're falsely saying, I'm not doing this, I am repressing that. You see? So overcoming will create that environment for holding on to, attaching another thing that is of the ego. They continue saying, all things are acceptable in the proper time for each entity, and in experiencing, understanding, and accepting, in the sharing with other selves the appropriate description, shall be moving away from distortions of one kind to distortions to another, which may be more consonant with the law of one. In essence, all of this means that all things are acceptable to be experienced, all of them, whether it be in your imagination or in the physical plane, because this is a game. We're playing at the universe. Consciousness is playing at exploring itself, so everything is acceptable. Now, when we experience, understand, accept, and we share with other selves, if possible, then all of this will start to move the distortions of whatever kind, which we don't care what distortion it may be, to distortion more consonant with the law of one. In essence, what I want to do initially is a mess, is chaotic. I don't even know why I want to do it. But the more I experience it, and the more I do it, the more it's going to align itself with the law of one, which is simply the manifestation of the Creator as it is, without distortions of the ego, of the separate self. Very important that here. Lastly, they say, it is, shall we say, a shortcut to simply ignore or overcome any desire. It must be instead be understood and accepted. This takes patience and experience, which can be analyzed with care, with compassion for self and for other self. So you see, it is a shortcut to try to repress your desires. What should be done, as Ra suggests, is to be understood and accepted. Those desires must be understood. I understand that I have this desire and I accept it. That you are creating what we do in the direct path, or at least the way I express it in the teachings, is that you become that space. You see, understanding comes from creating that space, and that space is acceptance, because that space is non-judgmental. And so when we establish ourselves in that space, then everything that comes along is welcome. Everything is allowed. And so we enter the state of contemplation of what is. So it's not about overcoming, repressing, suppressing, avoiding, averting. It is about accepting, you see, but at the same time, do not get attached. You see, do not get attached to the outcome of your desires. Do not get attached to the desire itself as a means to accomplish something that is going to fulfill you. That would be the separate self, you see. And the thing is that when we attach ourselves to the desire, then we begin to create expectations, and those expectations will lead us to disappointment always, because the expectation that we have, that the separate self always has, is to feel complete, and it will never feel complete in limited experience. The separate self dissolves its incompleteness into its wholeness, which is the true self. And so the key distinction here for you to take is, first, everything is acceptable. Everything that you desire and you want to do is acceptable. The only thing is that you do not attach yourself to it, and you don't repress it or avert it. Second, understand it. Understand that there is a desire from the Creator bubbling through you. It doesn't know itself well. It doesn't know what it's going to experience. So it is new. It's a novel thing of the universe happening through you. Understand it, accept it, analyze it. And from there you can distill, where is the love in this desire? Where is the service that I can provide to it doesn't have to be a physical service, which is, how does my service to the one helps here? In which way? And that is always linked to love. Do not stray away from love. And that's it. It's simply that. Do not attach yourself to the outcomes. Do not repress, because then you're going to feed more the separate self in that regard. And that is a beautiful way in which Ra describes the way in which we manage our desires. This is, again, session 18, question number 5. It is a beautiful one. Like I said, this is just my interpretation at this point, especially when we're talking about eradicating the separate self. Remember, that's what Jim meant to say here. So if you want to read more about it, again, I left a direct link to this question in the description. If you want to know more about me, of course, read the description and you can find more about what I do and anything else that I am creating. And of course, as always, thank you so much for being interested in this beautiful material, which I wish was known for more people because it has so much knowledge. And my intention is to distill this knowledge in a way that is practical, always and forever, for every one of us. I hope you have a great day, great night, wherever you are. And with nothing else to say, I'll see you in the next video.